vibe. Come let me lime, come let me vibe. Lime vibe. Come let me lime, come let me vibe. Lime vibe. Oh, lime vibe. Lime vibe. Come let me lime, come let me vibe. Lime vibe. Come let me lime, come let me vibe. Lime vibe. Oh, lime vibe.
Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to another Lime Vibe Live podcast. I'm your host, Yari Yarman Kemp, here from the Bahamas, and we're celebrating in the Commonwealth Caribbean. We're celebrating Emancipation Day that happened on August 1st, okay, which is today. And for some other Caribbean countries, they celebrated officially on the following Monday. But like the Bahamas, we celebrate ours on the following Monday. But we most of the Caribbean countries celebrate on August 1st. Of course, you know, it was the end of slavery in 1834 for the English colonies. They abolished slavery altogether. And so that's where we are. So this is the Emancipation Day weekend. And some places in Trinidad and Grenada, they're celebrating today. But we celebrate ours on a Monday. I don't know why we celebrate ours on Monday. And also with a special issue, not a special issue, but a special consideration that happened in the Bahamas regarding Emancipation Day. We also have Fox Hill Day that happens 8 days later. So apparently, when the Bahamas was read the Emancipation Proclamation back in 1834, on August 1st, the news didn't travel all the way to our constituency on New Providence called Fox Hill until 7 days later. And so the slaves in the other slave villages like Adelaide and Gambia, they knew that the slaves are free, that they were emancipated, but the people in Fox Hill, the Congos in Fox Hill, didn't understand that we were emancipated from slavery on August 1st. So they celebrate Fox Hill Day 7 days after Emancipation Day, which is amazing. There's a bit of history there for you guys. But let's go straight into our show. The first story is, speaking about emancipation of sorts, the International Court of Justice on July 23rd, and an advisory said that customary international law sets forth obligations for states to ensure the protection of climate system and other parts of the environment from anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions. This is an important move. So essentially, the International Court of Justice saying that cases of countries damaging the environment is justiciable. Once I need some water. They're saying that countries that harm the environment, those cases would now be justiciable, and that countries can bring a claim. Let's say, for example, the Bahamas can bring a claim against the United States for damaging its seawater, or for American companies damaging seawater. And that's an important move because never before has the environmental issue gone to the point of the International Court of Justice. Everyone waffle around it and wave it around it, but no, this needed recognition from the International Court of Justice because these are crimes committed by countries and large companies and corporations of some countries on smaller jurisdictions, smaller in developing nations, small island states like the Bahamas, like Jamaica, like Tuvalu, like Tahiti. These things are important. So now these smaller countries have standing or will have recognition inside the International Court of Justice when they seek for damages against companies and corporations in these large developed countries when they damage the environment in their small island developing states. That's a big move. I want to thank the International Court of Justice for actually recognizing this as a serious issue. Some more water. And so that's where it is. And people are saying don't jump for joy yet. We have to wait till the first case is brought forward. And I agree. However, we just have to take into consideration that this is a small step forward, what people have been fighting for years, to get, climate change and environmental harm brought into the International Criminal Court arena. This is a big move. So I want to thank the International Court of Justice for that. The second story, this report by the Dialogue for Leadership of the Americas, and it said that the People's Republic of China, they are deepening their climate democracy and diplomacy, in the Caribbean and Central American region, as the exports of renewable energy equipment to the region grew by 571% from last year. That's amazing. So that means China is now also giving a hand with regard to environmental considerations and also for renewable energy. That's big too. So as we've seen, the United States, they've started to get a bit more, I would say, antsy because the Chinese are investing heavily in Caribbean and Central America, which has typically been the United States' backyard. You can't deny that the Chinese are just not stopping. They're always lending money. They're always willing to reach out and do business. You just got to thank the Chinese. Nothing much you can do. And so that's how it is. I'm not a fan of the Chinese per se, taking over the United States. However, I recognize their input and significant input. And now they're getting involved in our renewable energies business. That's a big step forward. That's Chinese technology, and that's Chinese coming to help us to, mitigate some of our climate challenges and our environmental challenges, which is good. We also have another funny story. Apparently, this citizenship by investment firm called Henley and Partners, they have noted that Nigerians rank 5th in the Caribbean in buying citizenship by investment passports in all the major countries that have citizenship by investment. You're talking about Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, Grenada, St. Kitts, and St. Lucia. The Nigerians rank, 5th. And before them, you have the Americans, you have the Russians, you have the Chinese, and you have the Canadians. And so these are the people that are buying passports in the region. Say Nigerians rank 5th. That comes with wealth, I think. That's an oil money in Nigeria now, I think. That's the development money in Nigeria. That's the growth. And so these people are multi-millionaires in Nigeria, and they're willing to buy passports for themselves and their families, which is great. And, the citizenship by investment program ain't going nowhere in the Caribbean, man. That's the monsters out of Pandora's box. The gate is wide open now. No country, after they've tasted the development perspectives and the development, I would say, benefits of citizenship by investment, but you could buy a passport for $200,000 and still, bring money over to invest in the developing nation, like St. Lucia or Dominica. How could you go wrong with that? And of course, not everybody gets a citizenship by investment passport. It's not a free-for-all like how people consider it, people think it to be, but it is an important development tool for countries like Dominica and St. Lucia, whose main revenue comes from citizenship by investment passports. I mean, that's just it. They make up most of it. They don't have tourism like the way the Bahamas and Jamaica has. And Bahamas in particular is really a tourism gem because we're right next to Fort Lauderdale in Florida. So these countries like Dominica and St. Lucia that are far further flung down the way in the Caribbean, they don't get the tourist dollar like how we do. So they have to sell passports. And so that's good. But Nigerians, they're coming, man. I don't particularly trust Africans, but anyway, that's the way it is. I shouldn't say that I shouldn't trust that, and I'm an African, right? But I have my reasons, and I've explained this ad nauseum on the show several different times. And so, speaking of mistrust, another story, the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is calling Venezuela's president, Nicolas Maduro, a narco-terrorist in a scathing rant on Twitter, which is now X, saying that he's a narco-terrorist leader and that he's the illegitimate leader of Venezuela. And, I think it's pretty clear. Whether or not the United States is going to ratchet up, pressure against the Maduro regime is left to be seen. Maybe they may try something a bit more covert, but, Maduro's security is very tight. And so we'll have to see how it works out. And Rubio also said that, Maduro is also the head of the cartel of the Suns. The cartel of the Suns, the major crime syndicate in Venezuela. Rubio said Maduro is that. That's amazing. That's amazing, man. But I don't think anything's going to happen. If they wanted Maduro, they would have probably gone in there with a bit more force, but they may not want another war, even though Maduro is clearly failing. It's up for the Venezuelan people to decide their fate, I think, at the end of the day. The United States could help them, but, at the end of the day, Maduro is who he is. Let's go on to an entertainment story now, man. I don't know if you heard of this story, but the singer and artist, Sean Kingston of Jamaican heritage, his mother, Janice Turner, has been sentenced to 5 years in prison on this past Wednesday, but when she and her son were convicted of a $1 million fraud case. I don't know if you guys remember this case when Sean Kingston and his mother, they ordered up a bunch of large screen TVs and a bunch of goods and didn't pay for them, and essentially held the goods in their homes in Miami. And so apparently Sean Kingston's mother has a history of fraud as well, which came up in the case. And she has a history dating back several years of, getting involved in fraud. She's Jamaican, by the way. And after she serves her 5 years, she's going to get deported, I hear. But let's watch the video. Let's watch a report. What happened in the case. This is from CBS Miami.
Right now, it was sentencing day for the mother of Sean Kingston, who was tied to some fraud cases here by her famous son. Local 10's Sanella Sabovic is joining us live from the courthouse in Fort Lauderdale with what was handed down. Sanella.
Well, Christy, a federal judge sentenced Kingston's mother, Janice.
Oh, we can't watch that. YouTube probably blocked it out. That's no problem. Well, we're going to close it out. All right. The other big story was with the former Cosby Show star, Malcolm Jamal Warner, who passed away from a drowning accident. He drowned on, which day was that? He drowned on Sunday, July 20, in Costa Rica. And he was Theodore Huxtable on the Cosby Show next to megastar Bill Cosby. He was the son of Bill Cosby on the show. And so he was 54. And they tried to revive him. He was with a friend. The friend survived, but he didn't survive. So Warner was swimming down Playa Grande near the town of Cajita in the province of Limon on the Caribbean coast around 2:30 p.m. in the afternoon when a current pulled him deeper into the ocean, according to an Associated Press report. And I just want to say my condolences to Malcolm Jamal Warner's family and his children. Apparently he has 3 kids. I wish him all the best. He was the America's son. We grew up watching Theo Huxtable grow up on the Cosby Show. And some have said that without Bill Cosby, the Cosby Show, there would not have been a Barack Obama. I think it was a D.L. Hewley. He said it on a DJ Vlad interview, say without the Cosby Show leading the way in how black families should interact and behave with one another, upper middle class black family, we would not have had the concept of a Barack Obama. And I could believe that to some extent because we need to see that progressive, strong black family on American television. And Bill Cosby gave that to us. And through that, we had Theo Huxtable, we had Claire Huxtable. Like I say, rest in peace to, Malcolm Jamal Warner. And my condolences goes to his family. And we wish them all the best. Our last story, another obituary. Wrestler Terry Bollea, otherwise known as Hulk Hogan, died of a heart attack on July 24th, according to authorities. Hogan's cause of death is cited as acute myocardial infarction. It was essentially a heart attack, man. That's just a medical term for it, which in layman's terms means a heart attack. According to cremation approval summary report from the medical examiner's office in Pinellas County, Florida, and shared with news agencies later on, he died from a heart attack. I grew up watching Ric Flair and WCW, and when I watched WWF back in the day, which is now WWE, watching Hulk Hogan would be a treat for us, because we didn't have WWF broadcast where I live. We had WCW, so I grew up watching Ric Flair. And so when I had a chance to see Hulk Hogan and WWF Superstars, it was always a treat. I want to let you watch some of Hulk Hogan's best promos, man. We have that queued up for you guys. Let's go. Let's watch that.
Fully defending, but there are those right now that are questioning whether you can withstand the big man.
We don't care about those people, man. I don't care about those people that aren't stark-raving Hulkamaniacs. I could care less what they think. I'm fighting for life, brother. I'm fighting for all those people that have remolded their lives, man. Modeled after Hulkamania. Get their priorities in order, man. Walk around with a lot of pride. As far as those people that are on Andre the Giant's side, I wish they'd come on down, too. I'd like to slap them around just for a warm-up. But I've already gone through my transformation, man. I'm ready for Pontiac, Michigan. I'm not the...
Buddy.
They said that was the Coke era in the WWF, WWE. Everyone was coked out. These promos are just absolutely insane. Oh my goodness. I could see why people were entertained by this. You know, this is absolutely insane. You can't beat that. You know, a Coke fueled rant, Coke and steroid fueled rant, I should say. Man, my goodness. The Hulkamaniacs. Let's watch the rest of it, man. Let's watch another one.
Billy Red Lions here once again for Maple Leaf Wrestling and with all the stars of the World Wrestling Federation. And we'll be going back in the ring in just a moment, but before we do, I want to take this opportunity to thank all our fans out there from St. John's, Newfoundland, all the way over to Vancouver, BC, for all the cards and letters that we've been receiving from you. And to remind you that if there are any of you out there who will have any other comments to make about Maple Leaf Wrestling or certain stars of the World Wrestling Federation you'd like to inquire about, you can do so by writing to Maple Leaf Wrestling, care of Maple Leaf Gardens, Toronto, Canada, M5B 1L1. We'd enjoy hearing from you. But now, let's bring in the cream of the crop. The menace from Venice Beach, California, the world heavyweight champion.
Whoa, Billy Red, you know, I've been looking around Canada, and I'm thinking about buying some property, man. You know, I'm thinking about homesteading here, Daddy, because the trips are too far from Venice Beach, California, and the reason I want to homestead is because of the love affair that's going down here, man. With me in Canada, Hulkamania running wild, I'm going to build me a home right in the center of all of Canada. That way, I can take my private Learjet with the 24-inch pythons hanging out the cockpit, and I won't be too far away from home because Canada will be my home then.
Well, we'd love to have you up here, Hulk, and like you said, you know, you have a love affair going with the fans. Well, let's face it, not only here in Canada, but everywhere you go, because you are their favorite. You're their champion. And let's face it, Hulk, it's getting hotter all the time. The heat is on you. Everybody's after you. They're all trying to knock you off the top of that pole.
Well, you know, I know all about the competition in Canada, and yes, this WWF World title, this is all that Canada's built. But the thing is, man, I'm not worried about all that, Daddy, because whenever I step in the ring in Canada, whichever town I'm in, all those people are running wild with Hulkamania. And when I step in that ring, Daddy, I get that extra energy. The pythons get pumped. You see the eye of the tiger, the eye of the Hulkster, that is, and there's no stopping me. But before I climb that ring, man, when you're driving down the interstate, going to the arena, I don't want you flipping out when you see that big shadow hovering over the city. That's not a 747 coming in for a crash landing, Daddy. That's just the 24-inch pythons hanging out the cockpit, man. They're just hanging out the cockpit, so don't panic, man. Just go on to the arena, and that big shadow will hover overhead. And when I climb in that ring, all of Canada, get ready, Daddy, and the number one contender, whoever that may be, because what you gonna do when the 24-inch pythons and the Hulksters got a wild on you?
Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Yeah, we gotta go away, man. That's enough of Hulk Hogan, man. I should probably do a whole show of just wrestling promos. You know, I love the Ric Flair promos. They're much better than Hulk Hogan. And actually, Dusty Rhodes' promos. The Hard Rhodes promo, the Hard Times promo, I should say. That's the best promo I've ever seen in wrestling. But yeah, Hulk Hogan's passed away, man. God rest his soul and God rest his family. God bless his family, I should say. You know, and so we've lost a lot of people, man. There's Malcolm Jamal Warner, that's Hulk Hogan. You know, and a few other notables has passed away as well. And I just want to wish their families all the best. You know, Godspeed. Let's go back to the top of our show. So we talked about the International Court of Justice finally, you know, recognizing climate damage from countries who, you know, being blatantly, you know, damaging the environment. And they're saying essentially in their advisory back in July 23rd that these matters are now part of customary international law, which means they are judiciable. And that means that they actually can be taken in front of the International Court of Justice if someone wants to bring a crime of that nature, which is good. That's a big move. And let's hopefully someone could take a serious advantage of that and actually make that happen. And actually, you know, bring a case against China or the United States for damaging the environment. The second story was speaking with China. The second story was that, you know, China is investing more in renewable energy equipment in the Caribbean Central American region. Actually, you know, exports went up by 571%. So this report by the Dialogue Leadership for the Americas is said. 1 second. And China's not letting up off the gas, man. China's not letting up the gas at all. They are investing heavily in the Caribbean and Central American region. And you got to bless them for that. I just want to say thank you for the Chinese for doing that. You know, third story is that the Citizenship by Investment program, the passports in the region, the Nigerians are buying them up to the place where they're now fifth in the fifth in the countries who actually buy citizenship by investment passports from Caribbean countries like St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, and St. Kitts and Nevis. And so, yeah, they buy these passports, and Nigerians are slowly creeping up. They're becoming the new wealthy now, the African elites. And that's how it is. And so, yes, the reports by Henley and Partners, of course. You could go on Caribbean Magazine Plus, Carib Mag Plus, and you could read it there. And you could see what we have to say about that. And also, we have U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, essentially calling Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, a drug dealer. And, say he's an election fraud. He ripped off last year's presidential election in Venezuela. And so, that's just idle talk. They haven't moved any troops to the Venezuelan border, of course not. And so we'll have to take that for what it is. And we also had, the story of Sean Kingston's mother, who was sentenced to 5 years in a Florida prison for a $1 billion fraud scheme that she perpetrated along with her son. They were stealing items from department stores and they were storing them. They weren't giving them back. And that's essentially what it is. And so she's been convicted of a $1 million fraud case. And Janice Turner, Sean Kingston's mother, is Jamaican. So after she has served her time, she's going to be deported back to Jamaica. Trump's not playing with anybody, man. Trump's not messing around at all. And Sean Kingston's real name is Keyshawn Anderson. They were found guilty on all counts, but she was sentenced first, and I guess he's going to be sentenced at another time. And also we had Malcolm Jamal Warner passing from a drowning back on July 20th. He was in Costa Rica, swimming with a friend of his, and he drowned. The other person made it, but he didn't make it. Malcolm Jamal Warner is 54. Of course, Malcolm Jamal Warner was Theodore Huxtable on the beloved 80s sitcom with Bill Cosby, The Cosby Show. And so, yeah. Then also we had, professional wrestler Hulk Hogan, whose real name is Terry Bollea. He died on July 24th from a heart attack. And so we just want to say, our condolences to the families once again. I wish them all the best. But there we are, folks. That's our show for this evening. I just want to remind you guys, we also have back running the Line Vibe Live interviews. We've gotten new capacity with our production equipment. And so we're going to have more sit-down interviews on Line Vibe podcast, on the Live Vibe podcast, on our YouTube page and our Facebook page. So if you have not done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch page, Line Vibe 77. That's Line Vibe and the number 77 at Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Okay, so thank you for joining me again for another Line Vibe Live podcast. We look forward to you next week, and also look to our pages for our interviews. Thank you so much. Goodbye. We'll see you again next week, Friday.